B-A-T. It's in the name.
Welcome into the Helping Healing Humor with Ben and Travis podcast. Joining us once again is Scott Keiser. We wrap up our discussion with Scott about preparing for the financial impact of natural disasters and discuss some fun stories from our Freed-Hardeman days. We are so thankful that you listen. Be sure to share, rate 5 stars, and review if possible on your favorite podcast platform. We will get right to the interview after these messages. This episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast is brought to you by the 3rd annual Bella's Snowball 5K and 1 Mile Fun Run on Saturday, November 12th at 8 a.m. during the Host of Christmas Past weekend in Fayetteville, Tennessee. November is National Adoption Awareness Month, and proceeds from this race will help Luke and Heidi Eakes with their adoption travel expenses and support the mission of Always Endure. This event is fun for the whole family. Meeting Queen Elsa, face painting, bubble zone, and candy are just a few things to look forward to. We want to see everyone dressed up. Ruffled shirt, tutu, tights, something with a little Christmas flair. What will you wear to the ball? To register, go to alwaysendure.com and click the Events tab. Thank you for helping to remove a financial barrier so a child can gain their forever home.
Guess I didn't realize you guys were still out of the house, but out of sight, out of mind, you know? And I think so many times we think, oh, it's been a month, so life is normal for us up here, so it must be normal for them down there. And you guys have been recovering for a year, and there's probably things, even at this point, that church members could come down now to your area easier than they could go down to, say, Florida right now and help paint or help, do some of the things to help get a house back ready together for people that are struggling now.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, recovery just takes a long time. We were short on, and before Ian, we were short on contractors. Then we had a bunch of contractors come to our area, even from out of state. Most are good. Some aren't. That's going to be the same experience for Florida. Well, so we have people here that are waiting on insurance money even still to complete their home. And now Ian has hit Florida and South Carolina. So those contractors that are mobile, they're going where the money is.
Yeah.
And there's just not as much money in South Louisiana now as there's going to be in Florida and in South, Carolina. So
wow,
it's just part of it.
So Scott, we talked a little bit about FEMA earlier. I think you may have mentioned FEMA, and I just wanted to ask, what's some information, practical information that you could give us about FEMA and deadlines, and then also just in general, even if it's not just hurricane or flood or whatever, some deadlines as far as insurance goes. Claim.
Sure. So when you talk about FEMA, you're talking about the flood insurance policy. So the flood insurance policy, which is a national program, so Alaska to Florida, Maine to California. Those policies have a 6-month deadline in which a policyholder can present a proof of loss. Remember, we talked about public adjusters before. Many public adjusters are familiar with a proof of loss, and it's a very simple form. It can be a simple form, but you have to have the supporting documents to go with it. And so a proof of loss simply is a statement of what you say your damages are. You subtract the deductible from it, and then you end up with the net loss, and that's what you're claiming your damages are. So for the proof of loss under the flood program, you have 6 months to turn that in. So, as we mentioned, it took me over a year to get to the point where I am in my house where I'm essentially only missing kitchen countertops. There's a few other things, but that's the biggest deal. So it's important for someone who has a flood loss to get a public adjuster or a contractor or somebody out there that can look at the damage of your home or business and compare it to what your insurance company is telling you the damages are. And if there's a big discrepancy, then you need to take the time and hire a professional and look at that stuff and make sure that everything is okay. If there is a disagreement, then, we'll talk about that in a few minutes, I guess. But the big thing is to make sure you have 6 months from the date of the loss in order to turn in a proof of loss. And that's a big deal, because if you go past that deadline, then that's it. There's no going back. General deadlines are usually found in your policy. So some policies require you to turn in notification of a loss within 12 months. Some areas it's 2 years, and it varies upon the kind of loss that you have. But your policy, if you take the time to read it, your policy will tell you what your coverages are, what the limits of the coverage is, and what particular deadlines the carrier is going to enforce upon you if you have a loss. So it's very important to read your policy.
These are all things I've not thought about. So I know that I'm getting something out of this for sure.
And this would apply for any loss. So a fire loss, a loss where the toilet overflows. Now, I already talked about the mold exclusion, but still, if your toilet overflows, that's a homeowner's loss. It's not a flood loss. So, the deadlines are important no matter what kind of loss you have.
What about if somebody comes driving over the front of your yard and leaves, tire tracks and hits something and takes it out? Because that happened to me. It did happen. Nothing got hit. I'm just kidding. I got a pear tree out here that needs an ambulance. But
yeah. Well, in that particular case, I would review your policy, ask your insurance agent whether that's covered. It generally is. But behind the scenes, and this kind of gets to a master's level class, is that your insurance carrier will probably pay you for the covered damages, and then behind the scenes, they'll go back against the carrier for the person who actually did the damage and get recovery.
So one of the scariest things that I ever witnessed in my life was in the dorm room or in the lobby of Farrow Hall, where Scott Keiser and Kevin got into an argument, and Travis and I tried to get in between that. And if you know them, they're much larger than we are. So I know that sometimes arguments arise between people who even love each other. So, Scott and Kevin, I think, have a pretty great relationship. But there was some argument there. So I know that as a Christian, sometimes, we try to not be argumentative. We think in terms of, not bringing litigation against our brothers and sisters. But sometimes we have to, stand up for ourselves, I guess, when it comes to, facing insurance companies and other things. So you speak to that just a little bit from a Christian who may be listening to this.
Sure.
What do you think the right steps are there?
So I'll tell you just from a personal experience and we'll go from there. So I, as a Christian, trying to be faithful, I believe there's a big difference when we're talking about filing lawsuits against fellow Christians and disparaging the church and getting legal representation to help us in representing us with our claim against the insurance carrier. I don't believe it's a sinful practice to hire an attorney when you have a disagreement with an insurance carrier or a company or someone who's wronged you in this particular circumstance with insurance loss. The second thing to keep in mind is if you need help, then you have two recourses, generally speaking, to get help. Three. Number one would be your local Department of Insurance through each state. You can get free help from them. The second avenue is, again, to hire a public adjuster. Now, a public adjuster is going to get paid by taking a certain percentage off of whatever damages are recovered on your behalf. That's how he or she will get paid. And then the third avenue is to get legal representation with an attorney. Now, just because you hire an attorney doesn't mean you have to file a lawsuit. But in my personal experience, having an attorney represent me against my homeowner's insurance company has helped the stress level come way down. I'm no longer responsible for having to answer every stinking question that I'm asked about the loss. I do need to provide documentation and all that stuff to my attorney, who will take that and present it to the insurance carrier. But the day-to-day in and outs of the claim handling are now with my attorney, and he or she can really take a load off of you, especially when you're trying to work. And just because you get an attorney doesn't necessarily mean you have a disagreement with your insurance carrier to such a degree that you have to file suit. They're simply there really to represent you and to help you. And if there's such a difference between what the insurance carrier is willing to pay you for your damages and what you claim your damages are, well, then you can file suit and you can go through that whole process. But keep in mind, if you file suit, it may be a year, it may be longer now that we're recovering from COVID and all of this other stuff and the courts are backed up. You have to remember, this is getting into that master's level course again, that the criminal documents are always put before the civil documents, or civil suits rather. So you're already taking a back seat to the criminal court system. So anyway, just, keep in mind that you can get legal representation without filing suit. And I think that an attorney can help you in certain circumstances, especially to relieve the stress.
I'm no pro counselor like Ben, but I imagine that he would agree alongside with anything that's going to help bring your stress level down. You've already dealt with a hurricane, a
Right.
legit hurricane or some loss, anything that mitigates the stress that you have, I'm sure is beneficial.
Time is money, and money,
Yes.
when you start talking about things like this, you've got to work your job and you've got to do some of the paying. And like you said, there's going to be times that you go, hey, I don't want to have to pay for this. But there are people who've gone to school, a painter or they might not have went to school, but maybe school hard knocks. But, or lawyers who go, hey, I know how to do this and I know how to do it a lot quicker than you do. So,
Right.
I think there's a moment in time where you go, is it worth my time or worth my money? Which one is more valuable to me to keep my stress level down?
Yeah.
Right. And so case in point, let me just share with the audience a personal story about this very issue. So a bulletin was sent right before the 6-month anniversary of Hurricane Ian statewide to everyone in Louisiana that if you didn't have your proof of loss filed at the 6-month anniversary, you were going to lose all right of recourse against your insurance carrier for, in case you had a disagreement with your damages. Well, at my case of point, the only thing that my general contractor had done was put a temporary tarp on my roof, replaced the roof, and gutted my house. I still had not an estimate to repair my house. So I had no idea how much it was going to cost. So for me, I hired an attorney because I had no way of meeting that 6-month deadline by myself. Now, come to pass, the information we got from our insurance commissioner was actually wrong because his bulletin was a blanket statement. After doing a little research, it's the case that the 6-month statute of limitations had, and the proof of loss had to do with the flood insurance policy and not with the homeowner's insurance policy. But again, that goes back to just having all of the stress really, it's not eliminated, but it comes way down when you have someone who's advocating for you, and all you have to do is get documents and respond to questions.
Nice. Well,
so if you're in
Ben,
danger
actually,
of
go ahead.
missing a deadline, if you're in danger of missing a deadline because you lack the information, like in case of point in mine, then you really need to consider legal representation, because if you miss certain deadlines, you will have no recourse.
Well, we appreciate you definitely letting us know all that good fun stuff. Ben mentioned one of the funnier stories of our time at Freed-Hardeman with, I don't know how tall Kevin is, but y'all are both well over 6 foot tall, and Ben and I are certainly not. We're not close to that. And so I'm not sure that
Under
we
6 feet tall.
not sure that we took the proper recourse in trying to get in the middle of that and keep you guys from hurting each other in that. But I think on one of the last episodes, and we encourage you to go back and check that out. We talked about the vacuum cleaner being cut and shooting out the power of second floor at Faro. And I think we shared maybe one other story. We'll try not to rehash those. But tell us one of your earliest memories of Ben and Travis. And then we'll try to maybe throw another Scott Keiser story out there.
Oh man, you're asking me to go back 20 years or more. Yeah. Holy cow!
I'll share a story, and then if you come up with one, we'll let you share that one, and then Ben, if you've got another one. But anyways, I just remember going down to Homa and doing a vacation Bible school, knocking doors campaign while we were at Freed-Hardeman, and us going out on the large pontoon boat, Gator, going out to see the Gators. And, we get there and they're talking about how one of the guys from Discovery Channel, I forget which one it was, decided that he was going to go out in this little bitty, he was going to, kayak this thing. And them telling them, hey, there's a large alligator out there. You do not want to do this. And, well, I know what I'm doing. I've done this. And, got like 20 yards off the pier and immediately saw one and turned around and said, I think I'll take the bigger boat, the tour. But I can remember us going out there, and it was like grandma was out there running the tour.
Yep.
And they have the big, fishing reel out there and a big whole chicken on the end of it. And one of them things jumping up and grabbing it. And we had a couple of big guys on the boat with us. I know one of them was Caleb Danley.
Yeah.
And then there was another kid who was taller than you and Kevin. So, and at some point they all shifted to one side, either to get a better look or to get away from it. And I remember that pontoon boat just kind of shifting, and everybody goes, okay, one of y'all got to go back over there. Y'all end up in the dream. Yeah. But that was a fun trip.
Yeah.
And I
was that Greg Husband?
Mercury went, yes, Greg. Yes. I was trying to remember the name, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a big boy.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I think the last podcast we talked about the shampoo story. I'll try to clean that up and make it go from rated R to, G, if that's possible. But, oh, man, that started off with a snow globe, not a snow globe, but one of those things you put your hand on and it lights up. Apparently the globe came off and I shocked the kid who didn't appreciate it. And so he put a small snowball in my bed. Well, if you know me, like Travis and Ben do, it's go big or go home for me. So at the time it had snowed at Freed, which I think for the time of year was unusual. But anyway, I filled his bed with snow. Like it looked like somebody was sleeping in it. And, so he didn't get, he was upset about that. So while I was showering, I remember him throwing snowballs at me, and I took off and I think I squirted shampoo on him or something like that. Anyway, it was pretty hilarious. The dorm room shenanigans.
Yeah. The WWE doesn't have anything on Faro Hall rivalries. Yeah. They just would go, and I just sat back and enjoyed them.
Yep. That was a pretty good one, though. That's classic. As Nathan Harr would say, that's classic.
The first thing I really went and did, second thing, I went to lads leaders with this congregation when I was a kid that I now work at. I'm sitting in the building of right now. But then the other thing I did with them before I started working here was I went with Phil Dean and a group went down right after Katrina. And we came down there. I came down there with them. I wasn't working with them at the time. And I remember one of the things that we did was go over to one of the apartment complexes. I think we went to Hickory Knoll and we cleaned out the building, carpet and everything. And then the other thing we did was we helped some people evacuate. And I just remember that there was an older person that was all they were wanting was an alcoholic drink. As we were leaving the apartment complexes, and they kept begging us to just stop. They said, well, Mom, what do you want? I think it was a woman. and she just kept talking about the alcoholic. Well, I don't think the church group is going to stop and get you an alcoholic drink right now. But, at the moment I was thinking, I guess I understand if they were a drinking person, why there was a need for that in leaving their home for a long time. So it was an interesting experience. Definitely a different world.
Yep, that's for sure.
We always got cultured when we went down to Louisiana. I'll share one more story and then we'll let y'all go. I know, like I said, I'm in a similar boat. My wife will be leaving on Friday, I think for the same event. But nonetheless, I remember going to LSU, Alabama when Nick Saban was the head coach at LSU. And you and I went, of course, we went to Dreamland. And the guy wouldn't give you your change. And so they pushed your change onto my tab because I was an Alabama fan. And I just remember being really embarrassed about that because I thought, man, that's just terrible. That's low class. Well, y'all made up for it because y'all beat the brakes. I think that wide receiver for LSU that year still holds the Bryant Denny record.
Oh, is that right?
Yardage of reception. I mean, he lit us up. And I just remember thinking, man, who is this Nick Saban guy?
Yeah. And now you got him.
Yeah. Well, Scott, we appreciate you. We appreciate your example of, like I said, faith. And, man, for folks who've gone through what you've gone through over the last year, just from your social media presence, you would never guess that you guys were still building up and working on things. I mean, I just assumed you were. But we appreciate the information. And I know that just hearing the word for me, insurance, kind of makes my stress level rise. And so you've shared a lot of information that can help mitigate. That's a word I've used a lot today. It's a $10 word that I don't normally use, but mitigate some of that. And we certainly appreciate you taking time to be with us and want you to pass along our love to Laura and the kiddos. And of course, the entire Keiser family as well.
Sure will.
Thanks for being with us for this episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast. Be sure to download our free ebook, 28 Days of Focused Living, at benandtravis.com and receive all of our Helping Healing and Humor extra content directly in your inbox. We look forward to having you join us at the same Ben and Travis time, same Ben and Travis channel.